Value-added tax, VAT, is a type of consumption tax that is levied on the value of goods and services produced and consumed in Nigeria. The tax is generally set at a rate of 7.5% and is applied to most goods and services sold in the country, with some exceptions listed in the VAT Act. VAT is administered and managed by the Federal Inland Revenue Service, FIRS, which is responsible for assessing, collecting, and accounting for the tax. Under the VAT system, suppliers of goods and services are required to charge and collect VAT from their customers and then remit that tax to the FIRS. However, in certain cases, the responsibility for accounting for and remitting VAT is shifted from the supplier to the buyer of a good or service. This is known as the reverse charge mechanism. Under this mechanism, the buyer, who is also a taxable person, is responsible for accounting for and remitting the VAT on a supply, rather than the supplier. The reverse charge mechanism is intended to strengthen VAT enforcement by imposing additional compliance obligations on consumers of taxable goods and services. Essentially, if a supplier fails to charge VAT on a supply, the buyer must still account for and remit the tax, thereby ensuring that the tax is collected and remitted to the FIRS. The legal framework for the reverse charge mechanism and VAT in Nigeria is set out in the VAT Act. Section 14, 3, and 4 of the Act provides for a self-account provision for all supplies for which VAT was not charged. This means that if a supplier is exempt from charging VAT, fails to charge VAT, or is a foreign company that makes taxable supplies without a fixed base or permanent establishment in Nigeria, the buyer, taxable person, must prepare a self-account and remit the tax due to the FIRS in the currency of the transaction. Section 10 of the VAT Act provides that a non-resident person who makes taxable supplies to a person in Nigeria is required to register for VAT with the FIRS and obtain a taxpayer identification number, TIN. The non-resident person must include VAT on its invoice for the supply of goods or services made. The non-resident person may appoint a representative in Nigeria for the purpose of its tax obligations in Nigeria, and where a person has been appointed by the FIRS, the agent shall withhold and remit the VAT due on the transaction. If the non-resident person did not collect the tax, the resident person to whom the supply was made is required to withhold and remit the VAT due to the FIRS in the currency of the transaction. It is important to note that VAT registration does not, in and of itself, trigger a permanent establishment, PE, exposure or income tax implications. There are specified criteria for determining the PE status of non-resident companies. If a foreign supplier does not meet any of the various criteria for establishing a permanent establishment, PE, mere registration for VAT purposes should not expose the company to a PE risk. However, a non-resident company with a fixed base or a permanent establishment in Nigeria is required to comply with the provisions of the VAT Act. In conclusion, the reverse charge mechanism is an important component of VAT enforcement in Nigeria. By shifting the responsibility for accounting for and remitting VAT from the supplier to the buyer, the mechanism ensures that the tax is collected and remitted even in cases where the supplier fails to charge the tax. Non-resident companies that make taxable supplies to a person in Nigeria are also required to register for VAT and include VAT on their invoices, and buyers may be required to self-account for and remit VAT in certain cases. It is crucial for individuals to seek professional guidance from tax experts to receive personalized advice relevant to their unique circumstances. This statement serves as a disclaimer to remind the audience that the information presented should not be taken as official advice. Instead, it is a general overview of a topic from the perspective of Olatunji Abdulrazak, and it is up to the audience to interpret and use the information accordingly. Thank you.